Okay, so we are going to continue today, and we're going to look at humanism's effects on art, and we're going to be examining famous artists of the Renaissance. After this lecture today, you're going to work on finishing your art quest, and then you're going to move to an analysis in the School of Athens, which is pictured here by one of our famous artists, Raphael. And the key here is you're going to be looking at the influences, not only the changes in art, but the influences of the Greco-Roman world, and what the message is of Raphael, and how this is a humanist piece in displaying the importance of the influences of the Greco-Roman world and how it is a message that is rejection. So this is where we're going to come back. I don't want to give too much away in this connection to humanism because I wanted to drive our discussion when we return on Tuesday, but that's where we're going to move. So Raphael is an example of a famous artist that we're going to examine today during the High Renaissance, which was the height of Italian Renaissance art. But we're not just looking at art for art's sake. We're looking at art to see a reflection of social and philosophical thinking. So I want you to look for humanism in art. What are the themes of humanism that you read about? And can they be seen in art? Because that's really what they're reflecting. It's more than about pretty pictures. Then I want you to think about, despite the fact that the church is a patron, which is a major term we're going to look at, a supporter of Renaissance art, does the ideas of humanism, is it a threat to the church's authority, or can be used to support the church's authority? We know that they are a major patron of art. We see that even though humanists are secular, they have to go where the money is. They have to go with who pays them to work. And the members of the church, important members of the church hierarchy in the High Italian Renaissance, were lining up to pay Renaissance humanist artists to paint. Part of the reason is that these members of the church are caught up in the Renaissance as well, and they think all the art that comes out is beautiful and awesome. They want to use it to glorify the church. So just because it's in the church doesn't necessarily mean they support humanist philosophy. But we see those messages in here. Here's the image of the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, painted by Michelangelo. The slide wall is painted by other artists. The back wall back there you see is painted by Michelangelo as well at a later time in a different style, which we'll come back and talk to. So Michelangelo is one of our probably one of our great examples of artists from the High Middle Ages. You see an example here of the famous statue La Pieta by Michelangelo. This is his somewhat a masterpiece. If you think it in guild terms, this is his coming out piece where he becomes famous, showing the crucifixion of Christ after he's been pulled down from the cross in the arms of Mary, the mother, mourning as she holds the body of Jesus. When this was first shown by Michelangelo, um, it's a religious image. Many Renaissance art is, but it also contains humanist elements. And one of the key features here I want to bring up is the fact that it's signed. Humanists wanted to glorify the works and achievements of human beings, and one of the ways they did that was signing their own work, which didn't happen in the Middle Ages. This is why we don't know many medieval artists, or really hardly any. We don't know who made the stained glass in Gothic cathedrals and all that because they didn't take credit for their work. That's going to change in the Renaissance. The story behind this La Pieta is being shown at an art exhibition, and everybody was attributing it to other masters of art, and didn't believe that a young Michelangelo could have created this. Michelangelo, having overheard that, became very upset. He was known for his temper. On multiple occasions, had tried to kill people with hammers and chisels by losing his temper, and so he had lost his temper. Snuck back in that night after hearing other people tribute to other artists, and chiseled his last name Bonorate across the Mary's cloak. So if you were to go up to the La Pieta, you would see that crudely chiseled on this amazing work of realistic sculpture from one piece of marble. So they emphasize the idea of the importance of achievement. Within also humanism, as we talked about yesterday, is this idea of the Renaissance man, a person mastering all subjects. And that person mastering all subjects is, really a true humanist that's studying human achievement and what can be taken from human achievement. The greatest example of this is Leonardo da Vinci, which we'll look in our famous artists as well. He is not only an artist, he's a mathematician, he's an inventor, he's a biologist, he's a botanist, studies plants. He in his life is a genius that tries to master all topics of study. So here we can see his artwork, famous Mona Lisa, the most famous painting in the world. We also see the Last Supper in the Church of Milan, but we also see him studying human movement. We see the invention or his ideas of flying machines. He's trying to think of the mechanics and invention for. You can also see a tank displayed here. And when I get back, I'll show you some images of some of the other work that he did. So when when I get back, we're going to go over our sources and talk more about Renaissance art. But as you finish up your art web quest, start to keep in mind that humanism is reflected there. They're trying to also create Greece and Rome. So one of the key themes of humanist art and in art during the Renaissance in general is this idea to bring back Greco-Roman realism and perspective, to bring back the glory of human figures, and also to bring back themes that are secular. Now, many of the themes are religious, but that doesn't mean that you can't also use secular art or a glorification of even themes from Greco-Roman mythology. Here we have Donatello, who is supposed to be a religious symbol, obviously, or Donatello's David. It's supposed to be about the King David and slaying of the Goliath. But what Donatello did here as a humanist artist is he creates the world's first freestanding nude since ancient times, which is going to be copied by Michelangelo, his version of David and others. So it's this idea that he's implanting there, not only glorifying Greece and Rome, but also glorifying human beings and rejecting the idea of the fact that being human is necessarily sinful. One of the other key features we'll come back and talk about when we go over your art web quest, the idea of geometric perspective. In order to create realism, artists were creating techniques to make the eye see images in three dimension. So geometric perspective, you see these, you can see the lines that transposed on the Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci is showing foreground, midground, and background, and then creating lines that draw us in, not only to create focal points. In this case, the focal point is in the middle. You're drawn to the figure of Jesus at the Last Supper, but also to create the sense of depth, to create a third dimension, to emphasize the realism. So when I get back, we'll talk about our web quest, and then we're going to look at in these individual artists. The three artists from the High Renaissance we're going to focus on are the most famous. We're going to look at the works of Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael, and examine their works of that time period, and try to really see not only how art is changing, but it has recreated Greco-Roman world, but also the humanism in that art.